Hello again, and welcome to our podcast, Along the Rock. It's really a tribute to the people of the Sauk Valley and the valley and the river that runs through it. I'm Mark Morris. I'll be your host. My guest today is a friend of mine, and she wrote a book that I have read. Her name is Pat Pessman, and the book is called The Saga of the Lilac Bush, an American Pioneer Narrative. Pat, this has been in the works. It's finished now, of course, but it was in the works for a long time for you, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I mean, if you really want to be totally truthful about the matter, it really goes back to 1973 when we had a row of lilac bushes growing in our front yard. And this was the first home we purchased, and I really thought they didn't look very attractive, and I wasn't that impressed by them. They were kind of tall, and they kind of just took the view away of our backyard.
Sure.
And I wasn't really too impressed with them. And then the following year, I'm driving along US Route 30 on my way to Morrison, and I noticed this beautiful lilac bush that was just on fire with lilacs. Literally, I mean, I'd never seen such a beautiful lilac bush before. And I almost felt like I could roll my window down and touch it. It was so close to the side of the road.
Sure.
And that's what I remembered as I looked at it. It was like my thought, I had what I'll call a big thought. And it was, why would anybody plant such a beautiful lilac bush so close to the road? I had no idea why. And I would find out years later that it was connected to this pioneer, Wild West, Native American story that had its roots in Illinois, just 2 miles from where I lived. That's where this lilac bush was located. I had no idea it was 160 years old and still
really?
going.
When you saw it, it was that old?
It was that old. It was planted in 1850. So today it would be 175 years old, and it still looks beautiful.
All right. Well, how do the two incidents, if you will, the lilac bush and your travels out west, connect you to this eventual story?
Well, that would be the second big thought. Once I saw the lilac bush, every year when I drove by it, I would often just look for it because it was so big, even when it wasn't blooming. You know, there it was. And somewhere along the line, someone told me about the history behind it. And to this day, I don't know who it was. But they told me that 2 women who were sisters had planted it. They didn't tell me the date. I didn't know their names. But they said that they had planted it together. And then the one woman went on this journey with her husband somewhere in southwest Arizona. That's where they were heading. And it was along a river that they were massacred. This person, whoever it was, told me that. So now I had even more interest in it because it tripped my history trigger.
Sure.
So whenever I went by it, I would really think about it a lot. You know, like, gee, that is such a tragic story that these 2 women, you know, who were sisters, they planted this lilac bush and they never saw each other again because the one sister died in this massacre. Okay? So that was the one thought. Then we go out to Arizona. Many, many years go by. It's now 2010. And I have been in Arizona 1 year already, in 2009. Never thought about this story. But in 2010, I'm going over a bridge. And it's only a half a mile from where I live, in our retirement park. And I'm on the bridge, and all of a sudden, bingo, a light bulb goes on. And I'm like, there aren't that many rivers in Arizona. And I knew that because I'd been there 1 year already. There's the Salt, the Gila, and the Colorado. So I'm on this bridge and I'm going, I wonder if the people that were massacred, if it could have been alongside this river, which Vern and I live right next to. Wouldn't that be odd that I know where it begins, and now here I am living in an area where it ended? So that tripped my trigger. So I went right away to the museum in Florence, Arizona, which is the name of the town we live in. And I walked inside to the museum and I asked the lady at the desk, do you know, and I didn't know very much, I just said, Do you know anything about a family from Illinois, and they came out to Arizona? I don't even know what date it is, but the family was killed along a river. And she kind of thought a little bit, and then she looked at me and said, "I'll bet you're thinking about the Oatmans." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Now we got a name." I didn't know their name. So
Was that name familiar to you, though?
No, I had no idea what their name was. All I knew was the very basic, what I told her. Mm-hmm. So she went on now to elaborate a little bit more about the Oatman incident, and that it was, in fact, along the Gila River. She didn't really know the exact location, but she said with the right guide, you could go out to the massacre site, but you would never want to do it alone because you're out in the Sonoran Desert, which is vast, desolate, and it certainly is not meant to be wandering around in unless you know where you're at. Yeah. You have a map or a four-wheeler.
It's not a tourist trap.
No. You have to have a side-by-side or a four-wheeler, something to get around in, and you got to know where you're going. So I thought, well, I don't need to go see it, but I did want to find the general location. I thought that'll be good enough. If I can get a long-distance view, maybe, that'll be enough. I really wanted to find where it was located, the massacre.
Sure.
So that's what kind of tripped my trigger. I wanted to learn where it ended. I knew where the journey began, right next to this lilac bush, and now I wanted to know.
On Route 30.
Yeah.
Join us Friday, April 11th at 6:30 p.m. at the Next Picture Show in Dixon for Chapter and Verse Open Mic Night. Presented by the Radar Free Press and Saga Creative Writers Group. Enjoy live readings from local authors sharing their works. Authors, pre-register by texting or calling 815-994-8006. Want to sponsor and support events like this? Text 815-200-6404 for more info. See you there.
Captivity after her family was killed right in front of her eyes. And then the third trip was up to the area where Mojave natives lived, and that's where Olive spent 4 years of her life.
The Mojave, I think most people are familiar with. The Yavapai, I had never heard of before this book.
Yeah, they're a branch of the Apache.
Okay.
And they're noted for their horseback skills, their riding skills, and also for their marksmanship and also for their fierceness. You don't want to get into a conflict with the Apache. They were warriors. Even among their own native tribes, they were known as, an arch enemy. If you were not their ally, you wanted to leave them alone.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. I don't remember from that part of the book though. Was there a reason the Native Americans decided they wanted to kill this
that's a
vehicle?
That's a very
covered
good point.
wagon.
Yeah, by this time, Olive Oatman's family, they had been on this pioneer journey for nearly 9 months. They left Whiteside County in May of 1850 when they planted the Lilac Bush. They took off for Independence, Missouri, where they were going to rendezvous with the pioneer train of covered wagons. And they were following a prophet by the name of James Brewster. And he had duped them into believing that there was a paradise waiting for them at the mouth of the Colorado River. And if you know where that is, it's Yuma. Now, Yuma is also known as the driest place on the planet. They get about 1 inch of rain a year. So it isn't a real lush paradise by any means.
Something a little different.
So, by the time they got halfway into the journey, a lot of these, and they were called Brewsterites, but it was a branch of the Mormon faith.
Okay.
And they were beginning to realize, this guy, he's led us astray. But we can't really leave. What are you going to do? You're out on a pioneer journey.
Middle of nowhere.
You're in the middle of nowhere, and it isn't safe to leave your train because you're going to be a threat. I mean, you're going to be exposed to Native Americans.
Yeah, this is not an episode of Little House on the Prairie.
No, it's very dangerous. But there's strength in numbers, so they knew as long as they stayed in the group, they would be all right. But they were looking for a way to leave the wagon train when it came along. And sure enough, it did, because they reached a breaking point. Relationships began to dissolve. There was Royce Oatman's group, and then there was James Brewster's group.
Okay.
And they reached the area where Santa Fe, New Mexico is, and they had a breaking point. Royce Oatman said, we are going to take a southern route, and we're not going to stop in Santa Fe, which Brewster wanted to do. Brewster wanted to stop for a while, and Royce Oatman was determined to get to Yuma. So they broke up into two groups. Half of them went with Brewster the other half went with Royce Oatman. So now we're on another journey, within a journey. And you've got the Brewsters remained in Santa Fe. Oatman goes on along with about 40 of the people. Okay. There were 90 altogether when they left. So now it gets worse, because they're in the area of drought. And it was really, really severe. And this is what motivated the Native Americans to attack the wagon. And by the time they attacked Royce Oatman's wagon, it was the only one. Between Santa Fe and the area of southwest Phoenix, some left in Tucson. They left the journey in Tucson.
Okay.
Then they came to an area of Maricopa Wells, and some said, we're staying. We're not going to go any further. It's too dangerous. We're out of food. Supplies were very thin. The oxen were weak. And nonetheless, Royce Oatman says, we're going on.
He's a stubborn man.
Yes, and he made a very unwise decision, because he took his family, 7 children, and his wife and himself, and an unborn baby. Mrs. Oatman was about 9 months pregnant. And out they go into the desert all alone. Now, Mark, you know what that is. That's like you're a sitting duck.
You're asking for it.
And that's exactly what happened. You know, the Yavapai saw them, and they encountered them, I guess you could put it that way, and a bloody massacre ensued. They wanted their supplies, they wanted their food. Oatman did give them a little bit. He gave them some bread and stuff, but they were about out of food by this time, too. They were worried that they might not make it to Yuma. They were about 80 miles from their destination when they were attacked. So that's what happened. They were attacked because of the food issue and the drought.
Desperation goes both ways in this case.
Exactly.
I'd like to thank Pat for coming up, and I'd like to thank our crew as well for making this program possible. I'm Mark Morris, and I hope you can join us next time. It'll be part 2 of our interview with Pat and her book, The Saga of the Lilac Bush, an American Pioneer Narrative. Join us for that.